Hello everyone, I'm Mayor Mike, and it's been a long time, but we're here again talking point. There's all sorts of things that have been going on with the COVID-19 pandemic, not to mention all of the other things that are happening in 2020. But today I'm here with our Parks Director, Dan Kramer. Dan has been with us almost a year now, and boy, your first weekend was baptism by fire with Riverfront Rendezvous that last year, and this year with the COVID pandemic and all the things that are going on and all the events that are being canceled or trying to modify. It's been a rough year for you, I think.
You always say the first year you're supposed to learn how things have run in the past, but there's no routine this year, so I'm learning things brand new right off the bat.
So some of the things that I wanted to talk about, specifically relating to parks and things that are going on in the parks. We had to make the very tough decision this year to cancel Riverfront Rendezvous. I know you have been very diligent in talking with your peer groups. You've been talking with the state health department, the county health department, just about every resource to try and get some guidance as to what is and is not safe to do, so we can minimize the risk for our attendees, specifically to COVID-19, but really these rules apply anytime. I mean, the standard rules of washing your hands, don't cough at people, clean things up, those should apply in everyday life. This shouldn't be anything new, but it's amplified now. And so talk to me about the decisions on some of the major events, canceling fireworks, the city band concerts, those normal things that people have become accustomed to, and some of the reasoning behind it.
Sure, so really our planning process started when the COVID news started to come out about what are we going to do for some of the things that are not just small number gatherings, but really are mass gatherings by definition. So really going back 10, 12 weeks ago, we started to talk through, okay, how does that look? What does it look like? We set some timelines where we thought in a few weeks we should know a little bit more. And as we progressed through, we did talk to several different health leaders in terms of with our local health department to the state level, all the way to the CDC guidelines. And what we kept coming back to was the travel factor of bringing more and more people together from different locations. So one of the biggest pieces, as we all know, of the COVID guidance was people outside your household. Social distancing is incredibly important. It's really the first defense, other than washing your hands and doing those factors with some of the cleanliness and hygiene, or if you don't feel well, stay home. And we realized that for Riverfront Rendezvous especially, it's our whole region. We have people come from across the state to come to Riverfront Rendezvous because it's such a good time. So when we started our initial discussions, we thought, is there a way to modify this event, or is there a way to potentially delay the event till later in the year? And we went down two different avenues and tried to see what the planning processes would look like. In between that process, we started to see a lot of events that were scheduled for earlier in the year get delayed. They were being moved to different weekends, and we didn't have a clear-cut, clean window that says, okay, if we delay a month or we delay 6 weeks, are we going to be allowed to run this festival? So when we got to that point of mid-May where we needed to make decisions on contracts, entertainment, we took the first foremost practice of being safe. We wanted to be safe for our community, for those that are going to come to our festival, and we decided between the large number of people, all of the volunteer groups, and the way the food is served out of tents, while it is outside, there's a close approximation of people when they come to that event. We chose to err on the side of caution. And obviously, we also looked at some of our contractual obligations and our timelines to see what we could do. And at the end of all of that evaluation, looking at the CDC guidance, the local health department, we thought the best decision here was to err on the side of caution this year and to look to make next year the best event possible and try to see if some of the other things that we have in the community can get us through this tough time.
Great. You know, and there's an economic reason too, I suppose. First of all, we waited the timing of canceling it. Some people said it was too early. But we had contracts in place, and those contracts allowed us to get out of them, but we had a deadline. So but I don't know that everybody at home knows, you and I talked about this, waiting till the last possible minute to see if some miracle would happen or things would get better and we could still move ahead. That didn't happen, so to save the city money, we needed to make that decision at that time.
Correct. We really couldn't wait much longer. We were basically at the deadline of, aside from if we'd been given the guidance or green light, we could have moved forward, and then there would have been a financial responsibility for the city contractually with not only entertainment, but some of the things that we order in, Lumberjack Show, several of our entertainment venues. So we did wait till the end, and then based on the guidance we were given at that point, we did make the decision to cancel, which saved some of the financial responsibility we would have had to have been paid regardless if we'd have canceled at a later date.
Sure. And more importantly on that note too, the city doesn't make money on Riverfront Rendezvous. As a matter of fact, for a long time we've been losing money on Riverfront Rendezvous, but we've been doing much better. The community has stepped up, giving us donations to help make this thing happen, sponsorships, and adding value to that. So last year, I believe, was one of the first years we operated in the black. So it's a very close margin to begin with. And even if things did get better and we moved on, our attendees are still very nervous. There's a large segment of society, myself included, that doesn't want to be around large crowds because we don't feel safe yet. We're still getting new cases frequently in Portage County, frequently enough. I mean, we're much smaller than places like Milwaukee and Chicago and New York, but we've got 15 cases and 4 of those came in the last 5 days. So we're not out of this. There's going to be people that are unwilling to go outside. And even though it's going to be a great weekend celebrating the independence of our country, you're going to get a segment of society that doesn't want to come to that event and spend their money like they normally would because they're still nervous. So if you lose attendance by 20, 30, or 40%, your revenues are down, which means we are not only in the red, but we're significantly more in the red now. Take away 30% of the revenue, that burden gets put on the taxpayers. From a financial standpoint, with COVID-19, we are already down in revenues. We're anticipating losses in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. It simply wouldn't be fair to ask the taxpayers for yet another chunk of money to pay for an event that wasn't as successful as it could have been. So I think you did a great job there. I think we made the right decision. I know people are disappointed. But I gave everybody my word, and you need to help me keep that word, that next year is going to be the best Riverfront Rendezvous that we have ever seen.
Absolutely. And our sponsors and everyone that we work with for this event has been really tremendously supportive, and we really look forward to making 2021 one to remember forever. And our event is important to our community, our region, and our leadership group, and you and I included when we talked through it, we tried to find any avenue to make it safe and make it work. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do that this year, but next year is going to be one of the best years ever.
Thank you. And I would remind our viewers and listeners to think of those nonprofit groups that normally sell food. I mean, that's a fundraiser for them. The Crystal Ice Skating Group, the boys youth softball, the Boy Scouts have a lodge sale there. There's a bunch of nonprofits, all of the ones that you like to frequent. They're not going to have that revenue either. So if you have some money laying around that you want to use to support those nonprofits, please do so. They need the help just as much as everybody else. Dan, tell me about some of the other events that are typical during the summer. City Band. I mean, that one seems like a no-brainer because half of the instruments are people blowing things through, and so that seems like a real easy one to call. But the City Band, Riverfront Arts Center, those sorts of things, what's going on?
Yeah, so when we started, so we'll start with the City Band ultimately. When we talk with the organizers and the individuals that run that program through with the City Band, we talked about a couple things. One, how many people does it attract, as well as what's some of the demographics of the attendance. And we did determine that some of the demographics that City Band does definitely attract is in the high risk category, number one. So we thought, okay, is there, again, similar measures that can be put in place that would keep it safe? As we evaluated through that, being outdoors, we thought there was some things that could happen that maybe would allow it. But as we looked at the local health order, executive order number 1, that limits it to 50 people, as well as the close proximity of the band itself. Like you said, as they're actually, they're orchestrating the performance, they're continually going to have to be using their mouths, and there's going to be obviously the things that go on with the instruments. So at the end of the day, when we got to that point with that decision as well, we said, in this situation, it's best to delay and see what happens here over the first part of the summer. And again, the organizers have been very supportive, trying to say, if we can bring it back, we'd love to. But ultimately, we know for the months of June and most likely all of July, the City Band will not be running. But the park system as a whole, even in addition to things like that, even going back to when it began, we had things like the ice show at the Willett Arena, one of our largest events that we put on. And there again, we had to make the tough decision at that point to cancel. And we have a lot of performers that were, sad to see that not be able to put their costumes on and go through with that. So we are starting discussions about what will we come back? What does it look like maybe in the fall for things like the Art Center? Then we transition into outdoor sports, so things like tennis courts and our pickleball courts, as well as disc golf and all the activities that we have, basketball in our park system. And initially, some of the directives and then points were to see if we could close those things, and we did. However, we've now transitioned into basically the next phase of that. We've posted a lot of signage. We're encouraging people to make sure that they sanitize their hands or wash their hands before and after entering those facilities. We are asking to make sure that they maintain the social distancing at all times. Things like tennis courts where there's multiple facilities, we've asked them to alternate. So if they're on the first court, the next set of players is not on the second court, they're on the third. And similar things with like our playground facilities that have just recently opened. We're asking the people that are using it, if you don't feel comfortable, don't use them. We want you to be safe, stay at home, just come through our parks maybe and exercise. But we do have some of these amenities in our parks now open as long as the proper precautions are taken.
Good. And I know that was a big deal for a lot of people when weather started getting nicer. After the April snowstorms and things like that, people wanted to get out. We had some nice days. The Green Circle Trail in our park systems have probably gotten more use than they have in a long, long time. And that's great because it gives people a chance to see some of the things in our parks that they may not have been aware of. So those things were easy to open. Running people outside the Green Circle Trail and the larger open areas, Municipal Park, Emerson Park now, and maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later too. The use of those facilities have expanded. We have opened all of the restrooms now, and those have been open for a while. We want to make sure people have access to those facilities so they can wash their hands or use the restrooms as needed. Those are open. Fishing has been probably more prevalent this year than I've seen anywhere else. Thanks to prime water anglers, we have all those docks around the Municipal Park area. For a while, we had to close our playground equipment and some of those things. Talk me through the process of how we determined that they initially had to be closed and how we can safely start using that equipment again now.
Sure. So ultimately when the Safer at Home order came out, there was some particulars within that order that stated playgrounds, for example, needed to remain closed. So essentially we monitored the orders that came out from the state level right away initially and followed them to a T.
And that's really because we can't sanitize monkey bars every time someone uses them. So they're very difficult to keep clean.
Correct. Pretty much impossible. You rely on the rain essentially, and unless maybe there's a spill or something at a playground that we address specifically, yeah, there is no sanitation methods for those facilities. So after that order was no longer in effect, that's when we started to examine what are we able to do right now. We initially extended that. We followed and mirrored those guidelines. Again, trying to make sure that we were ready and that we knew we were able to do if we were going to open something. And then we were continually in communication with our Portage County Health Department. So after we started to have some of the openings of restrooms and some of these facilities that we were getting guidance on, we started the conversation about if we open these things or if we're able to open them, what type of signage or requirements will we need to do? And again, with great guidance and help from the local health department, as well as reading things like the CDC guidelines and some of the other things that are out for sanitization of other areas in the parks, that's when we made the determination that playgrounds could open with the guidance similar to what we had done for tennis courts or for disc golf facilities and things of that nature. So, and again, we are stressing the importance of don't touch your face, make sure you use hand sanitizer. And we've had a lot of positive comments from parents that have said that they carry hand sanitizer everywhere now. People are starting to realize that's a really important thing. And so far, it's been really positive feedback. And if you've been out on the nice sunny days, people really want to be in the park system. And we have one of the best ones in the state here, and people are utilizing it every day right now.
Yeah, great, great. So our parks are open, our playground equipment is open. We ask everybody to be cautious and follow those common sense type guidelines. One of the big things that rolls around now that school is out is those summer athletics. And we've got everything from horseshoe and volleyball to softball, baseball, soccer. We're not quite there yet, but we're making progress. So tell us about that process and how they were initially closed and how we're gradually allowing those sorts of things on public facilities too.
Yeah, so very similar. There is really 3 levels of guidance we've been watching and monitoring. From basically CDC guidelines has been one of the large areas where and again, CDC guidelines are very broad because they cover our whole area, not just Portage County. I mean, they're nationwide here. So then the Wisconsin Department of Health as well as the local health department. So when the Safer at Home orders, once they expired, at that point we again extended and did not have organized athletics or activities in the parks. That was based on some of the guidance that was available at that point. Ironically, if you actually examine those 3 sources, there's a little bit of a disagreement between what should be allowed or isn't allowed. So geographically, based on what's going on in the different parts of the country, you'll see a little bit of different approach to this. Some are still saying that they're not allowing it. we began to develop plans. A lot of our organizations in Stevens Point run a lot of the athletic activities and the organized activities, and my department really stands along to help them by preparing facilities and making sure things are safe and ready to go. So these organizers, to their credit, weeks ago had reached out and said, we want to plan as if it will be allowed at some point. And they spent a lot of time putting together actual return to play plans. Those return to play plans have things, anything from how they're going to spread out for social distancing, what type of cleaning of their actual equipment they're going to have, overlapping so that there's a 15-minute clear window where one team would leave and another team would come to practice, educating parents to say that you drop your child off, then you pick your child up and there's no conversing around the fields, really doing anything they can to diminish that interaction between people so that they can keep them safe. Once they had those plans in place, again, the Portage County Health Department was a big player in this and helped us, reviewed them, offered some more suggestive feedback in terms of keeping rosters, tracking, and for things if they ever had to do social, I should say tracing if anything came to be, and they approved those plans. At that point, the Park Commission, just last night, reviewed those plans, and they did open this first phase of organized activities, which will allow up to 50 people for things of practices. And that number does not mean players plus 50 people. It ultimately means if you have two teams and let's say there's 10 on each, that's 20 of the 50, and the others need to spread out for spectators, coaches, people that are visiting. So we're just about to start some of that organized activities, and again, every one of them has gone through a return to play plan. And the city's going to be a big help and aid these groups to make sure that we're following those plans and that people are being able to be safe while getting some of that exercise and recreational activities that they've been looking for.
Great, great. And how have the sports organizations felt about this? I know they've been integrally involved. Everybody's okay with it?
Yeah, so ultimately they have shared, they've got some participants that have expressed concerns too that they may not be ready to come back to play right away. So I'll give the sports credit. The organizers of the boards have been very supportive to say, we want to develop a plan forward. What does it look like if we are able to? But they are setting it up that all of the organizations, if a person does not want to play yet, they are even leaving spots where some of these children or participants will be able to sign up later because maybe they're not comfortable here in the month of June or early July. So they have been very proactive to think of a number of scenarios, and they've put a lot of different plans in place so that if something happens, how do they react to it, so they can be proactive versus reactive if things go on.
Good. And we've got some great groups that practice their sports in the city and bring a lot of tourism as well into the city. One thing that I know we both have been fielding questions on is we have a municipal pool. We've got the Emerson Park swimming area. We've got the Wisconsin River, so there's areas to swim, but some people feel more comfortable doing it in the municipal pool. That one's a little tougher. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so the municipal pool is one of our best summer attractions. People really enjoy coming out and swimming, and we did have recently a real large project at the pool where we upgraded the filter system, and we really were excited for a really great pool season. What happened ultimately is back a month ago, the Finance Committee reviewed our pool plan. And at that point, we were doing some regional planning with several municipalities around us. And we were basing it on the Badger Bounce Back Plan, which was one of the large metrics at that time. When things changed over with the Supreme Court order, we started looking at some more of the guidance that was coming out on swimming pools. The city's original plan was not to open the swimming pool until phase 3 of the Badger Bounce Back Plan was declared. We had put plans in place and made the adjustments so that we could potentially do that. At that point, we set a July 1st as a drop-dead date that the pool would even consider opening. Since that happened in May, a lot of different guidance has come out. You'll probably read about things like the Wisconsin Dells attractions that are opening with water parks. The CDC, the state health department, and our local health department had more guidance on what's going on with chlorine-treated water, where the COVID-19 might exist. And there's evidence to support that COVID-19 does not carry into the water if it has the proper chlorine levels. So once that was determined and that guidance came out, we started putting a plan together of what it would look like in our pool if we reduced the bather loads, which is essentially how many patrons are at the swimming pool. If we spread them out, took things like the chairs off, reduced the number, could we open? After we went through and developed that plan, which we did spend quite a bit of time trying to put together, we were able to get that approved from the Portage County Health Department again, that we could modify our opening and have the potential to open. Last night, we took that plan before the Park Commission and reviewed it, and we showed some financial implications of that as well, because if we reduce the number that are paying participants of our swimming pool, we'll be open just as long, essentially. So a lot of our expense will be fixed, what it was planned to be, but our revenue numbers are not going to be what we forecasted as if we were able to open without restriction. Last night, the Park Commission took the first step to authorize opening that pool underneath the modified plan. So where we sit today is we are making a plan that we could open for July 1st. However, there's 2 more levels of approval that are needed. Essentially, the Finance Committee will now review the financials of that decision, and that is this coming Monday.
The 8th?
The 8th, yep. And if pending their approval, it would then go on to the Common Council. Ultimately, what will happen at this point is we will be ready, and if we get those 2 authorizations, our pool doors will open July 1st in a modified approach.
Okay.
If something would change at those meetings, we would react to that change at that point.
Okay, and the council, the council decision will be June 15th. So depending on when people are watching or listening, it may be after the 15th.
Yeah.
So you can check the city website to see if that got approved and when we can open. If it gets approved and we do open July 1st, what are some changes that our patrons can expect to see?
Yeah, so one of the biggest ones I think they'll notice when they come in right to start is that we will have basically travel lanes essentially. So where a patron would enter the pool is not where they're going to exit. So we're going to try to minimize as many of the touch points and the common areas that people would pass each other outside the water as possible. So that's one of the first things. We're going to encourage to use things like cards versus cash so that we don't have to do as much frequently cleaning of the frequently touched surfaces. Once you enter the pool, a large change will be that there will be no deck furniture. So we're going to ask our pool patrons to bring their own chairs so that we're not cleaning people's furniture when they're going from one chair to the next. The really other piece that we'll have is we'll have attendants that are actually on the deck at all times watching for social distancing practices, making sure that our group sizes are not congregating or having people get too close to each other, as well as all of our normal staff that we have for the lifeguarding responsibilities. We are going to close the water slide because of the difficulty to try to do the sanitization of that water slide. There's really no great ladder that you can put up against a slide, as you can imagine. Our concession stand would also be closed. So really, we're going to focus our efforts on maintaining the safe pool environment. And then another large change is the bather load. We would reduce that by maybe as much as 75%. So we're looking at modifying the pool schedule. We used to have a set schedule every day. So we'd have a couple hours in the morning, there'd be a break, a couple hours in the afternoon, and a few hours in the evening. We're going to set this up based on our staffing levels so that we can safely open and staff the pool at the levels we need. And then it'll be a reduced bather load is what it's called. Once we hit that maximum, at that point we'd have to wait till somebody leaves to enter the pool. Once somebody's enjoyed their day at the pool, they would be leaving through their own exit route. In between all of our sessions, we'll do a full cleanliness disinfectant of all of the pool deck areas, as well as the water's continually cleaning itself with our filtration system. And then we will have our attendants also cleaning frequently touched surfaces while we're open. And then if you add in all the PPE, our lifeguards, we intend to have masks, we'll have PPE for the staff, and we're gonna do everything we can to keep our staff safe and those that are coming to see us at the pool.
Awesome, thank you. I know you're very much on top of this. One other thing that I wanted to touch on before we maybe get a quick overview of what might happen in Emerson is lodge rentals. We've got a lot of people that rent our facilities during the summer, and we haven't been able to do that because of the COVID-19 restrictions. We're gonna start. Tell me about that one.
Yeah, so very similarly, last night the Park Commission reviewed a 3-phase plan is what we set up. So we had not allowed lodge rentals all the way through this first weekend of June. We had blocked them or canceled them or had people reschedule them based on the orders that we had. What we've done now is we put a plan that the city staff, because we do bring staff in on weekends before these parties, to do a full disinfectant and sanitization and cleaning of these facilities before a potential renter would enter them. We've got that plan in place, so every time we have a renter, we will pre-clean the building, which we did before, just not at the same extent that we would now. We are also going to ask the renters to do a full cleanliness of themselves, which was something that they were required to do before. Now they'll get better guidance, so of all of the frequently touched surfaces, they should do it, which we provide the cleaning product for. We're going to place signage in those lodges, as well as give signage to the renter themselves when they check out keys, reminding them of things like wearing cloth face coverings, keeping social distancing, group sizes no more than 50. What the Park Commission approved last night is phase 1 and then the plan to move on as we go, which will be a 50-person maximum for these rentals. So beginning this Friday, June 5th, will be the first set of rentals that are allowed to come in our lodges. We do have many on the books. People have anything from graduation parties to baptisms to family gatherings to just grill outs that they do in our lodge rentals. So our keys will go out for the first time this year on Friday with all of those protocols in place. And as one renter is done, say on a Friday, Saturday morning, our crews will be back in cleaning those facilities so that the parties that are there Saturday have a clean facility, and we'll continue that sanitization process daily for any time we have a rental.
Great, great. And they can find more information on the city website, stevenspoint.com/parks, and you get all the park information out there. So Emerson Park, we acquired that. We've gone through a study to determine what people want with input from the neighbors and the Friends of Emerson Park group. We've got a plan now.
Yeah.
Tell me about the plan and what sort of amenities we might be able to expect. We've just got a couple minutes left.
Yeah, the plan is excellent. The Friends of Emerson Park engage the community as well as the stakeholders for the area, and ultimately what they've come up with is a full handicap accessible playground facility. There's actually a toilet restroom within that playground, a multi-use surface that's for tennis, basketball, and pickleball. They have bike racks. There's a large green space still in the park to be able to do multiple sport activities or just picnicking. And again, they've really focused in on not only some parking for accessibility, but some of the accessible pathways within the park system so that a park user can really navigate the whole park in an accessible way. There's some unique designs potentially tying in some art with some chalk areas that are within it. And this park plan is going to be one of Stevens Point's pride and jewels once it comes to fruition here in the near future.
I think so too, and because we're getting into the intense heat of summer, there's a pretty cool ice skating track that's going to be installed at Emerson Park in the winters now too, right?
Yeah, so a traditional ice rink people think of as this big square where you skate in a circle. Out there, believe it or not, we try to do a kind of a figure-8 track. So we built the design so that we can do that single track around it. So if people want to skate more in a single track style or a racing style, they're not just going in a circle on a big round piece of ice. So it is included in the plan, and there will be winter sports at that location as well.
That's pretty cool. Do you know if that's up on our website yet?
Yes, the Emerson Concept Plan is on the website.
Okay, so they can go to stevenspoint.com and just search for Emerson Park. They should be able to see that plan. And hopefully we can raise enough money to do it because it's not a cheap process. So if anybody wants to get involved, they can contact the Parks Department here, contact my office, or if you happen to know someone who's on the board of directors at the Friends of Emerson Park, you could certainly contact them as well. I'm sure there'll be some fundraisers in. One thing we didn't mention that's going to be happening very soon is we got approval last year to install the pet swimming area, which will be installed at Mead Park. It's already on the contractor's list to put the fencing up there, and it's just a 4-foot fence just to kind of define some boundaries. It's still open to public people swimming. It's just a designated area for people to bring their pets if they want to do that sort of thing to cool off during the summer. Dan, thank you very much for everything you do with the Parks Department. I know this has been a tough year. At least the last couple of months have been crazy, and you and your team have done a fabulous job making sure that the people of Stevens Point have someplace beautiful to go out and enjoy the outdoors and recreate to the best of their ability. We'll get back to our regular city band concerts and the 4th of July celebration and fireworks at some point. But for now, we want to make sure that everybody's safe and that we are following all of the safety rules that we should be following anyway in regards to trying to stop the spread of this virus. Our parks are open, and we are going to continue to provide the best services that we possibly can in the city of Stevens Point, and we want to thank you for your cooperation in that regard. If you have ideas, as always, contact my office, contact the Parks Director's office. We'd love to see what those ideas are, and maybe next year we can implement some of those things. That's about all the time we have. Again, Dan, thank you very much, and until next time, people, be safe. We've been Talking Point.